and welcome to KRAD COVID Readings. I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, reading my writing to make the pandemic palatable. This is the last part of my week-long reading of my HEROES REBORN novella, Save the Cheerleader, Destroy the World. So without further ado, here is Chapter 21. 2 May 2012. Email sent by Abaya Betnagar to Claire Bennet Petrelli. To Claire at hero_truther.org. From Abaya at hero_truther.org. Subject, Incident in Billund. Greetings, Claire. Thank you again for putting me in touch with Claude. He has proven very useful in helping me not be seen, even though my ability isn't invisibility as such. But thanks to him, I can blend into the background even more efficiently. I just wish he bathed more often. I travelled to Denmark to follow the rumours of a man who could breathe fire. In fact, the first story I heard was that there was a dragon in Billund. And given what has been happening in the world, I was willing to believe it. It turns out that an elderly man named ameliorates has breath that can blow out fires. A woman showed me a cell phone video she made of him in a cafe putting out a small oven fire by simply blowing on it. The day after I arrived, the Lego factory, the primary business in Billund, which I learned is referred to as Bricktown in English, caught fire. Mr. Ertz literally blew the entire fire out. But, as I said, he is an elderly man. After putting the fire out, he collapsed right on Astfetch. Paramedics arrived, but once they were told what had happened, they refused to treat him. The exact phrase used by one paramedic was translated for me by a local as saying that they only treat people, not mutants. It wasn't Yamart Ertz's job to save lives, but he saved hundreds today. It was the paramedics' job to save lives, and they refused to do so. I wonder what kind of world our children will inherit. Best, Abaya. Hi, Louie. You gonna help me read? Chapter 22. 12 June 2014. Continuing the letter written by Claire Bennet on her laptop. So now, finally, we come to the part of the story where you and I meet, Hammer. I used to love 4th of July when I was a kid. There was always a football game. In fact, there were always dozens of football games. But the best 4th of July ever was in 2012. Peter and Claude showed up on the barge when we were docked in Tarragona, Spain. You should remember that day pretty well. The 5th of June, 2012, when you and 7 other Evos were almost lynched in Monaco. The first I heard of it was when Peter, Claude, and the 8 of you all just appeared on the deck of the barge. Between them, Claude and Peter had been able to make everyone invisible, and then it was just a matter of getting from Monaco to Tarragona. Peter indicated that Siler may have helped, but apparently he didn't stick around. Peter has never been willing to talk about Siler with me, ever since he broke into the house that time. And I haven't seen hide nor hair of him. Whatever. As long as he's not around, I'm happy. Anyhow, Claude took off, while Peter stayed to help Mohinder take care of you all. You were in such bad shape when you came in, wearing that stupid trench coat. I just finished one of Mickey Spillane's Mike Hammer books, and since you were unconscious, I started referring to you as Hammer. Your head wound was pretty severe, and you had fractures in both your legs. Mohinder was worried at first that you'd never walk again, but you obviously proved that wrong. By the time 4th of July rolled around, we were docked in Liverpool. Nobody in England was going to celebrate, of course. I remember Claude saying that morning, "Happy illegal secession of King George's Colonies Day!" But we had Detlev. She was unconscious when Claude and Peter brought her over from Monaco with you and the others, but she'd made a full recovery, and she'd stuck around because she wasn't scared with us the way she had been out in the world. That was your first day walking outside the infirmary, and you did so wonderfully. I remember being so proud of you and how well you walked around the deck of the barge. And then Detlev created fireworks for us because she's such a sweetie. And we had our first kiss. I never told you this, but I didn't date a lot. Most of the boys in high school were stupid, and I got asked out all the time. Hello, blonde cheerleader. But usually we only went to a movie or something, and I never even kissed the boy. I've kissed a few guys since I got my powers, including a really nice guy named West and a few others. I'm being completely honest with you when I tell you that no kiss was as amazing as when you and I first kissed on the barge under Detlef's fireworks. Too bad it all went into the toilet after that. You got all moody and annoying, and you kept saying we needed to be more proactive. You argued with me, you argued with Mohinder, you argued with Peter, you argued with Micah, you argued with Claude. Honestly, that one time I thought you and Peter were going to kill each other. And then you kissed me, and it was almost as good as it was on that one 4th of July. And then everything would be okay for a little while. But then you just up and left without a word. No note, nothing. You were just gone. Chapter 23. 7 November 2012. Port of Ravenna, Italy. Dion Cornwell stared at his tablet, which was playing a YouTube video of the president's re-election acceptance speech from late the previous night. His victory hadn't been as decisive as his first, and that was mainly due to his opponent hitting him on the Evo issue, but the challenger's platform had offered no good alternative. And so the president got 4 more years, and last night he had given a decent, if not great, speech. Together with your help and God's grace, we will continue our journey forward and remind the world just why it is that we live in the greatest nation on earth. Thank you, America. God bless you, and God bless these United States. The video ended before the thunderous applause, for which Dion was grateful, as he already had a headache. He was sitting in the staging area for the raid, which would be starting as soon as Interpol arrived with the international warrant from the World Court. His team had set up in an empty cargo container. It had been quite an up-and-down year for Dion. After Claire escaped, Dion and most of the rest of the mercenaries were fired. Schwenkman probably would have been too, but he quit instead, going to work for a company called Renatus. Luckily, a security firm based out of Italy called Sicurezza Castiglioni was hiring. Signor Castiglioni himself had been very impressed by Dion's resume, and had brought him on board. SC's primary client was Interpol, which contracted the company to complete various tactical assignments. This particular task was a dream come true for Dion. The little twerp Esposito had also been fired by Lamarck after Claire's escape, but he'd gone to work for Interpol directly to help round up Evos who had crossed national borders. According to Castiglioni, who was leading this raid himself, Esposito had tracked down a woman named Abaya Batnagar in the Czech Republic and had learned the location of the headquarters of the Petrelli movement. It turned out that the movement was based on a boat, which was why Interpol had had such trouble finding them. But the best part for Dion was that the little bitch Claire was apparently on that boat. She'd played him back on the Charles Darwin, and he had gotten his ass fired, and he was so very much looking forward to repaying her for that. Should have expected it from a damn Cowboys fan. Castiglione entered the cargo container together with an inspector from Interpol. Dion put his tablet away in his pack. The inspector was a short man with a day's beard growth. He spoke with a British accent and a very raspy voice. "We've got our warrant. The people on that barge are wanted for dozens of violations of international law. They're also extremely dangerous, so proceed with caution, please." Castiglione said the same thing in Italian for the people in the unit who didn't speak English, and then everyone stood up and checked their weapons one last time. As Dion went over his P90, he thought about how very little caution he intended to use with Claire. It wasn't as if he could actually do any permanent harm to her, but that just meant he could shoot her all he wanted. He intended to dump his entire magazine into her. It wouldn't hurt her for long. It would make him feel a lot better. At Castiglione's order, they moved quickly across the dock and boarded the barge with the words Highland Dream stenciled on its hull. They moved in formation through every deck, through every corridor, through every room. They found absolutely nothing. Dion, along with 3 of his colleagues, checked the engine room, the point farthest from where they had boarded, and therefore the final place to look. The engines seemed to be in good working order, though they were currently shut down. And then he looked under one large lever and saw a device standing on its own. It was an explosive. Son of a bitch. Bomb! He yelled as he turned to run out of the engine room, his 3 companions on his heels. He kept yelling, "Bomb!" over and over again as he hurriedly disembarked, accompanied by Castiglione and the entire rest of the unit. The barge exploded in a very loud, very bright conflagration. Dion held his hands to his ears, but it wasn't enough to keep them from ringing. The inspector came running toward Castiglione. "What the hell happened?" "Caccio, they knew we were coming," Castiglione said in his heavily accented English. "There was no one there." "How is that possible?" the inspector asked. "Our information had 24 Evos living on that damn barge." Dion couldn't believe the cop was dumb enough to ask that. "They're Evos, for Christ's sakes. Didn't you read comic books when you were a kid? Strange powers beyond those of mortal men and all that crap? They do this! He winced as the ringing in his ears got worse. One of these days, Claire. September 2013. Abbazia di San Giovanni, Spilimbergo, Italy. 2013 had been the best year of Claire Bennet's life. In 2011, she had been the public face of the Evos, which was a whirlwind of insanity. In 2012, she had been on the run as the secret face of the Petrelli movement, which was a great big bundle of stress. Then they got word that Interpol had captured Abaya and gotten information out of her, including the location of the barge. There was no time to move it, and the barge was pretty much burned anyhow. So Claude got his hands on some explosives, and they left them behind as a present for Interpol. The bomb was designed to go off a good 5 minutes after it was first touched, so the police would have plenty of time to abandon ship before it went boom. Some people went back to their homes, others to other safe houses. In addition, Angela provided sanctuary. Angela's husband's family had roots in Italy, after all, including several family members who were part of the order of Benedictine monks that ran an abbey in northern Italy at the foot of the Dolomites, the mountain range that further north became the Swiss Alps. Claire had taken them up on that offer of sanctuary, as had several others. Now she'd been here for 10 months, and she'd never, ever been so happy and content. Over those months, most of the others gradually took their leave of the abbey. Sister Domenica, or Meneghina as everyone called her, treated the Evo guests like family, feeding them and taking care of them, but many of them grew bored and wanted to get back to reality. Claire thought they were all insane. Reality was bombs and swimming through turbines and secret servers and clandestine messages and getting buried alive and having your head sliced open and waking up on a coroner's table in mid-autopsy. Here, there was the beautiful, quiet countryside, delicious food, fresh fruit and vegetables, and excellent wine. The monks made their own wine, both for their own use and to sell. It helped keep the place solvent, as there wasn't a lot of money in being a monk or a nun anymore. There certainly wasn't as much call for illuminated manuscripts and the like. The bed she slept in was more comfortable than the one in her dorm in Arlington University, and every day she saw green grass, beautiful trees, and lovely mountains. Outside the abbey, people wanted to kill her, even though she couldn't actually die. Why would she ever want to leave? One morning, Claire got up, stretched, and smiled as she saw the sun rise in the east and heard the rooster crowing dawn's arrival. When she'd first come to San Giovanni under the cover of darkness with a dozen tired, scared Evos, she had always considered herself a night person and viewed getting up early as the greatest sin in the universe. But after 10 months in this place, she couldn't imagine not being up with the sun. She threw on a robe over her nightgown and opened the door to her room, to find a familiar face standing there, smiling, wearing that stupid trench coat. "Hammer," she said bitterly. He winced. "I wish you wouldn't call me that. What are you doing here? I missed you." She went back into the room, shaking her head. "How'd you even know I was here?" He smiled. "I have my ways." Then the smile fell. "Besides, things are getting weird out there. More and more of us are going public. People are aware of us now, and it's about equal parts support and hatred. It's a mess. I just needed a break from it. Something to make me smile. And honestly, in my life, the only person who's ever been able to make me smile is you, Blondie." Claire contemplated complaining about that particular nickname, but that would make it harder for her to defend calling him Hammer. He walked closer and grabbed her shoulders, pulling her toward him. She stared up at his eyes, which were intense. "I miss you. I miss hearing your stupid arguments about what you call your family. I miss the feel of your beautiful hair as I run my hands through it. I miss the taste of your lips. I miss the smell of your skin." He grinned. "I haven't missed you calling me Hammer. But most of all, Claire, I miss the sight of your smile. That smile was the first thing I saw when I woke up on the barge, and I honestly think that smile is the reason why I'm still alive and giving a damn about being alive." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes, and she found herself forgetting the arguments, forgetting the bitterness, and remembering those kisses. And then he leaned in, and she found herself kissing him hungrily. He spent the day with her. She showed him around the abbey. She introduced him to Meneghina as a friend, and she nodded her understanding. Claire wasn't sure if she only thought of him as a fellow Evo or something more, but it didn't matter. Together they ate the abbey's excellent food, drank some of their superb wine, and then that night they went out into the mountains. They made love under the stars and then fell asleep in each other's arms. When Claire awakened at dawn, she was alone in the mountains. Hammer was nowhere to be found. She ran back to the Abbey, but there was no sign of him. For the second time, he left her without a word. A few days later, she woke up in the middle of the night, nauseous. Even as she ran to the water closet, she knew something was horribly wrong. Since her powers developed, she'd never felt nauseous. After she threw up rather loudly and violently, she went to the sink and splashed cold water on her face. She was going to need to ask Meneghina to borrow the Abbey's car so she could go into town and buy a pregnancy test. Chapter 25. 12 June 2014. Concluding the letter written by Claire Bennet on her laptop. You certainly weren't kidding about the mixed feelings out there in the world. I actually started paying attention to the news after you left and saw that you were right. They actually refer to some of the people who want the Evos to live in peace with regular humans as Clarions, which is kind of hilarious. Anyhow, the plane's landing soon, so I should finish this up. Who knows? Maybe you'll be at the summit. Supposedly, Evos are coming from all over the world, and it'll be a big gathering of peace and harmony. It'll be like Woodstock. Or maybe it'll be like Altamont. Look at me, making music references from Dad's childhood. Either way, I can't help thinking about what Abaya said in that email she sent me, asking what kind of a world we were giving to our children. I guess with the twins, Thor and Loki, Harold and Kumar, on the way, I'm thinking about that a lot now. What will it be like for them? The part that scares me is seeing Dad again. I don't even know what I'm going to say to him. We've been on opposite sides of this pretty much ever since Central Park. I have no idea how he's going to respond. Renee promised to talk to him before I get there, prepare the ground if you know what I mean. Renee's known Dad for 20 years, and he doesn't know how he'll react either. Anyhow, like I said, I'm going to upload this to Micah's secure server. Maybe you'll read it someday. Claire. Chapter 26. 13 June 2014. Evo Summit, Primatech Paper, Odessa, Texas. Claire clambered out of the limo that had brought her to the summit. The driver ran around to the other side of the limo to help her. He had met her at the airport, complete with a sign that said Claire Bennet, and led her to the limo that Angela had provided. There are a lot of things I dislike about being pregnant, she muttered as the driver steadied her, but being unable to gracefully get up or sit down is by far the worst. Smiling, the driver said, "Well, ma'am, at least it should be over soon. If you don't mind my saying so, you're pretty far along." Claire gave the driver a grateful smile and nod, then looked over at Primatech headquarters, which had gotten a lot bigger since the last time she was here, confronting Siler on level 5. It was also packed to the gills with Evos and regular people alike, and tons of media. Some of the Evos were even performing. She saw a troupe of dancing shape-changers, and others were happily displaying their powers. I wish it was like this everywhere, all the time. Well, ma'am, maybe after today it will be. Hope so. Then she stumbled and caught herself on a parked car. Unfortunately, she did so on a car with a sharp grill in front, and she cut her hand. "You all right?" the driver asked, grabbing her hand. "It'll be fine," she said with the surety that came of years of watching every cut heal. She stared down at her hand. It didn't heal. "You sure you'll be okay, ma'am?" "Yeah." She shook her head. "Probably something to do with the pregnancy. It'll be fine." She walked to the main entrance of the summit. A man in a jumpsuit with the Renatus logo, who wasn't visibly armed, who was very obviously security, walked up to her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I'm Claire Bennet." She had stopped using Petrelli once she arrived at the barge. There didn't seem to be any point. "I'm here to..." "Is something wrong, ma'am?" But Claire didn't answer. She felt very weak all of a sudden, and the area between her legs was incredibly moist. Looking down, she saw a puddle of water on the ground, but it was tinged with red. Blood? And then she collapsed. She heard indistinct voices around her. "Get the ambulance over here! Her water broke!" "She shouldn't have collapsed like that." "What happened?" "Her name's Claire Bennet. She was here for the summit, but her water broke and she just collapsed." All right, we'll take her to St. Jude's. On 3. And then, as darkness engulfed her, she heard nothing else. Story from this point on was continued in episode 7 of the Heroes Reborn miniseries, which was June 13th, part 1. So if you haven't seen the miniseries, you'll just have to read it and find out what happened next. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this week-long extravaganza. We'll be back next week with more stories, obviously. Check me out online at DeCandido.net. Read my blog at DeCandido.wordpress.com. And if you could support me at patreon.com/KRAD, that would be great. There's all sorts of cool stuff there for patrons, including movie reviews, cat pictures, TV reviews, excerpts from my works in progress, vignettes featuring my original characters, and first looks at the first drafts of my stories and book chapters. So please do check that out. Thank you very much, and please stay safe.